First idea that we often really learn is the idea of me. Me, and of course what follows me is mine. This is one of the very first ideas that we really learn. And this idea of me gets sort of put on to this simple, rudimentary sense of existing, this sense of being. Now we have a name for it. What name have you named the simple sense of being? Right? But as soon as you name it, it draws your attention to it. And then you want to start defining the name, defining yourself even more. Then we start going and adding more abstract ideas about ourselves, right? Good, bad, right, wrong, smart, whatever it is, energetic, lazy. We start putting all these labels onto ourselves. All these labels are abstract. If someone could reach into your mind and take all the labels and just yank them out and throw them away, they wouldn't be throwing away anything that's essential to you. And you can start to see this in your own experience. And it's important that you see it in your own experience if you just watch the nature of your own mind. You'll see that your mind will create these labels, these ideas, these conclusions about you, about others, about the world. Once the mind starts to learn language, it starts to talk to itself. I'm sure you've noticed that. You can be walking down the sidewalk or driving your car, and the mind just starts to talk to itself. Have you ever wondered, who am I talking to? There's nobody else here. Is there two of me? One to talk and one to listen? Who is my mind talking to? It seems like almost a silly question, but it actually can reveal something quite deep or quite profound. When you start to see that your mind, it's not talking to anybody. It's just talking. So the next time you have self-talk going on, which I think for most folks is pretty much all the time, just notice, who am I talking to? Who is my mind talking to? I'm talking to me. Is there two of me, one to talk and one to listen? Because we talk to ourselves in the same way that we talk to others. If you listen to the narrative in your mind, it sounds very much like when you actually give voice to the narrative. When you tell somebody, when you're talking to somebody, it's got the same quality, a very similar quality as when your mind is just talking to itself. And the more you talk about to yourself, the more this abstraction, this abstract idea of self that sort of orbits around the very simple sense of being, the more this sense of self starts to be experienced as more and more and more concrete, more solid. So something that started out as an abstraction, as a name, starts to feel more and more and more and more and more and more and more solid. And that causes a certain sense, it causes the sense or the feel of separation. Me as opposed to you, you as opposed to me as opposed to the world or nature or whatever it might be. Even one thought opposed to another thought in your own mind. A lot of human suffering, psychological suffering, is caused by a mind that's divided against itself. So a thought that's judging thoughts. Right? A mind that constantly condemns itself, or a mind that is constantly elevating itself. But essentially, when we really start to look as what the nature of this me or this self is in our experience, that's the key. It's we have to look in our own experience. If we're just looking in complicated descriptions, we're still in an abstract state. We may think we're getting somewhere, but we're still involved in one abstraction after another. So of course I'm using abstract ideas right now to communicate to you. Even to say hello is to utilize the abstraction of an idea, of a concept. So we do use ideas all the time. They obviously have a relative usefulness. But we really need to look very closely at this idea of ourself. And if you really start to look really closely, looking closely simply means you just watch your mind. You just watch it to see what it does. You watch your own thought process. And thoughts are abstractions, right? They're just ideas floating around in your mind, in the chemistry of your brain. So when we come back to actual experience, so we're not trying to define self, whether it's good or bad or right or wrong or spiritual or unspiritual, because all the definitions of yourself are just abstractions. They're here for a moment and then they disappear. If in most everybody's conditioned to have certain ideas about themselves and others and the world, and so they come with great regularity. They come with such regularity that after a while, they become our style. They become what we think of as real. Until we really start to look at the nature of our own mind.